So hey, this is my video for Seminar 9, and I'm just gonna start right away. So I had some difficulty trying to reflect back on my current practicum placement, trying to find criteria for the seminar, but I did think about this section in Reader's Digest that I read last September. And they had a whole section about funny teacher stories, and two stories caught my attention and made me think back to the seminar. So I'm just going to read those two short stories for you, and hopefully they can kind of match the criteria for the seminar. So first one says, everybody's a critic. It says, a junior in my English class gave a big thumbs down to the autobiography he read. His reason? The author talks about only himself. So the second one is just a moron. Says, after a coworker had finished an English lecture, his class had fouled out. A 10th grader stayed behind to confront him. I don't appreciate being singled out, he's told the teacher. The teacher was confused. What do you mean? I don't know what the oxy part is, but I know what a moron is, and you looked straight at me when you said it. So these are the two questions or the two statements that caught my attention that I'm going to use for my seminar reflection. So why do I think this is beautiful or meaning? So I don't think these statements are as beautiful as the examples our professor gave us, but I think they are meaningful. They're obviously ironic, but I think they're meaningful for us as educators and the need to change our instruction to help our students learn more. So I would see where teachers would maybe laugh off this comment or get irritated by this comment, but I think this is a really big learning opportunity for students, for teachers, because these are clear misconceptions of learning from the students, and this would be a really good opportunity to either teach the whole class or to teach the student the right concept or skill. So I believe that these statements match two criteria to Bloom's taxonomy. So I think they match the two lower levels, so that's knowledge and comprehension, because as I stated before, it is a clear misconception from the students about what an autobiography and an oxymoron is. So the first level of Bloom's is knowledge, where they talk about knowing specific facts, terms, concepts, other principles and theories. So this relates to the statement because the students don't know the concept of an autobiography or the term an oxymoron. And then I kind of included comprehension because, again, that's to understand, interpret, explain. And the students obviously did not understand what the teacher had said or what the author had meant in the book, etc. So analyze the question about the misconceptions. So, as I mentioned before, the misconceptions were pretty clear. They didn't understand what an autobiography or an oxymoron was. So, you can tell that the concept of an autobiography missed the student because of his statement, the author only talks about himself. Because we know that an autobiography is a self-written text. And then the second student didn't understand what an oxymoron was. So, because he stated, I don't know what the oxy part is, but I know what moron is. These are simple but critical misconceptions. Obviously, they're critical because they give students the knowledge to work in normal daily society. Obviously, picking out different texts or understanding different conversations. So yeah, these are really important to clear up, even though they can be understandable mistakes. So it says to analyze the questions based on child development and cognition. So I found 2 theories that I thought matched really well with these statements. And they are Piaget's and I'm going to totally botch this, but Vygotsky hit their 2 theories based on cognitive development. So Piaget referenced schemas in his cognitive development theories, and I think both the first and second scenarios play witness to this theory about background knowledge and students not having enough or correct of this schema about these topics to obviously understand and go on with instruction. Vygotsky's theories about social interaction and like cultural influence on students. So I kind of thought of it as social and cultural interactions basically being what are they exposed to, what language are they being exposed to, and depending on these scenarios and everything, these students may not be in a culture, a socioeconomic area that allows them to have the pleasure of completely knowing what is going on when you talk about an oxymoron or an autobiography. They may be more focused on like their survival needs, not educational, instructional needs like these concepts are. So I think that's kind of where I was going on that. I know that Vygotsky also talks about the theories based on language and internalizing language and having an emphasis of this cognitive development. And I thought, again, for the schemas and Piaget's theories, what are the students' background knowledge? You know, what is their background in language, and how have they been taught to internalize that language. So how would I ensure that students feel free to ask these questions in my class? I would try to implement the saying of there are no stupid questions, but obviously try to find a more PC way of saying that. So I would think at the beginning of the year, posted in the class as a poster, reminded throughout the year, I would tell my students that it is critical to their growth if they, it's critical to their growth and to my growth as an educator if they were to ask these questions and make these statements, because as I stated before, it is a learning chance. You know, right now with these students obviously showing their misconceptions and misunderstanding of instruction, even if it's present or in the past, then we need to recognize these statements. We need to break them down into what they are, and then we need to what's that word? We need to take charge of it. We need to understand it. We need to find the answer. We need to work together. Yeah, modify instruction towards these statements and questions. And so it says construct an answer to these questions, or I guess mind statements, and explain why they're appropriate. So I didn't really think of actual dialogue to say back to them. I kind of had like on the lines of, so I would say something along the lines of, I understand your concern, or your critique. Do you remember that criteria for nonfiction writing? Can we define autobiography? Can we break down the word? How does this give us a clue about the text that you're reading? That's for the first scenario, based on the student's misconception about autobiographies. Or the second scenario, where the student didn't understand oxymoron. So I would say something to the student like, I was not singling you out. I'm sorry that happened. Can we, discuss about, why you misinterpreted that situation? Can we break down, like the autobiography, can we break down the word oxymoron, see what it means? Can we look in a definition, or a dictionary, look at a dictionary to find the definition? So those kind of answers. Making sure that they don't feel in the wrong because they've asked a question about their misunderstanding, because they're not wrong. They're learning, which is an important aspect to portray to the students. And so I thought these were appropriate because they were calm, they were respectful type of responses, and I based off of it as these students were in a formal operational stage, and theorists discussed that these teenagers act on impulse, they misread social cues, so that would explain the behavior in both the first and second scenarios that I provided for you, because in the first one, he didn't really look into the actual book, or the concept of the book, and so just very act on impulse. Just, I don't like this because I don't understand it, or I don't understand his purpose for writing it. And then the second one I thought was definitely a social miscue. Thinking the teacher singled him out by looking at him, thinking that he called him a moron. So yeah, I definitely thought that those matched that type of operational stage in those teenagers. So I hope that the scenarios were good. I hope it met the criteria. I hope you kind of enjoyed my responses to the questions, and I'm looking forward to seeing your response and your video. Bye!